Thanks for tuning in to this new and improved OFN Today program on the Ourlads Football Network for this Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. As you can tell, I'm really excited about getting started with the OFN Today, a program that we actually aired several years ago. Dan Shonka and I, boy, those were the days. We had a lot of fun doing them. And we actually aired them here on YouTube where we were still only an audio outfit. But now we're doing NFL, college football, scouting, fantasy football, handicapping, and more. And we're doing it on video here on YouTube. And we've been doing that for the past year or so with our new channel here. So all the viewers out there, we appreciate you watching. And we hope to continue to attract even more. This is eventually going to be a daily 5-day-a-week program. But for right now, we're just going to inch our way there, starting with our coverage this week, where we're actually going to talk a little bit about the Northeast, as far as Northeast football, specifically up in the New York area, where we're going to talk about the New York Jets today. We're going to talk about the New York Giants with Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post on Thursday. And then on Friday, from Rivals, we're going to talk some Rutgers football. And we're going to do that with Richie O'Leary, who's not only going to talk Rutgers football, but we're going to have a little two-parter. So if you're not into Rutgers football and why would I want to watch that? And by the way, just keep in mind, just because specifically today's show is going to be a lot about the Jets does not mean that whenever we have a guest on, it's only going to be about that team. Like, for instance, on Thursday, right now, John Cooper, our lead scout here, is going to be my special guest to join me. We're going to talk about both the Giants class, the Jets class. We're also going to talk about who he believes might be some sleepers to keep an eye on. Everybody wants to talk about Sanders, Shedeur Sanders dropping, and maybe he's the biggest value play ever. Well, I'm going to ask John about some other value plays to keep an eye on. That'll be on Thursday's show. And then Friday with Richie, we'll talk Rutgers, but we're also going to talk about the transfer portal. So Rivals does a great job of updating everybody on what's going on with the college football transfer portal. And we're going to get an update on that with Richie on Friday. All right. So like I mentioned, we're talking Jets today. Matthew O'Leary from the Matthew O'Leary YouTube channel is going to join us. We're going to talk about the Jets, their draft class, Justin Fields, and more. Before we do that, I am going to check out, I was surfing YouTube and came upon a pretty cool video. I believe it's a channel called Jets Media. I think he does a really good job, or at least he does a really good job with this video. So I'm interested to find out more about the channel. And I think he did a really good job on Justin Fields. And Justin Fields is a player, of course, I've watched him in college. There's a lot to like about his game, but there's also a lot to be suspicious about regarding whether or not, does he have what it takes to be a more well-rounded winning quarterback? He's got a lot of Lamar Jackson in him. And yet we haven't seen Lamar Jackson succeed very much in the postseason. And if you're along the lines of a Lamar Jackson type quarterback, and the guy that's actually doing it better than you can't even get far in the postseason, what does that say about you? So as a Jet fan, definitely hoping that Justin Fields could be more than just that. Can he be more than just what Lamar Jackson is and what he's doing? As a Jet fan, I don't necessarily want to emulate another team. Nobody does as a fan, but because that never works, really doesn't. But what you do want to do is learn a little bit from how does an offense like the Ravens, and they run with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, is there something that they're not doing right that the Jets can eventually figure out what works for them, and maybe they could take that a step further? They have a new coaching staff, obviously, and that gives the fans hope. Aaron Glenn, being a former Jet, really makes things very interesting and exciting for us fans. There's no question about that. It's a new GM. The jury is still out. We're going to talk about that first draft class, talk a little bit about free agency. There's still a lot of holes on this Jet team. They're not winning the Super Bowl in 2025. They're not even going to win the division in 2025. It's still going to be the Buffalo Bills. They're still the team to beat. and there's no doubt about that. But can they find a way to the postseason? Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that. Every year in the NFL, in the AFC, in the NFC, there's always a team, sometimes two. Nobody believes that they're going to be a playoff team. And somehow everything goes right, whether it's injuries, players stepping up, playing better than they've ever played before. And I think the Jets have that type of talent. Now, again, being the seventh team in a wild card type of situation and just maybe playing a playoff game, which is something Jet fans just love to do. We don't have to advance. Just let's get there. It's been too long. That's a win. That's a win all day long. Yeah, I think the Jets have that talent. But I say this all the time. I probably say it more than anything when I'm previewing the season. I'm going to do a lot more of that in the coming months, and that is you have to stay healthy. Health is a big, huge part in the success or failure of teams. And the Jets have had absolutely no luck with injuries all these years that they've been eliminated from making the postseason. Not that that's the sole reason, but even when they've had some decent teams and some decent talent, injury luck just hasn't been on their side. Okay, before we bring in Matthew, let's take a look at this video. Actually, let me make sure that I've got the sound in there. Yep, I think I do. Okay. Let's find out about Justin Fields from Jets Media.
Let's go over why he never worked out in Chicago. Justin Fields arrived 11th overall, much to joy of a fan base who was enamored by his impressive physical skill set and who were desperate for an answer at the quarterback position. The Mitch Trubisky failure was a prolonged period of pain and disappointment that came nowhere near being worthy of the second.
I'm sorry, but this is something I have to admit. Anytime you're right, you have to admit it. I thought this was so. We've got proof here at Our Lads, and this isn't that long ago. It's a while back, but not that long ago. This was just so ridiculous. The Bears drafting Trubisky first overall was the biggest joke. It made no sense at the time. There was nothing that the average fan could see at Mitch Trubisky that would lead them to believe that he would have been the first pick overall in the NFL draft. That's the Bears. Oh, and by the way, they still have the same general manager.
Overall pick. This led to the arrival of Justin Fields, a second-team All-American in 2019 and Big Ten Most Valuable Player in 2020, and going a grand total of 20-2 as a starter in the process. He had a strong arm, was accurate, and threw an immaculate deep ball, all while being able to turn on the Jets and flip the field.
Yeah, I don't know about immaculate deep ball myself. And that's the one thing, when I've seen him play, and I take a look at. Oh, by the way, just wanted to clarify things. I wasn't referencing the fact that the Chicago Bears GM is still there. I didn't mean the guy who drafted Trubisky. Basically meant the guy who is still there now. Because I didn't think that the Chicago Bears, the way they're situated right now, I don't believe that they should have maintained the same leadership base that they have right now. So that was my point. Because we've talked about this before on the program, that maybe the best thing that the Bears have going for them, and the including Ryan Poles, is the fact that they hired Ben Johnson. And sometimes you can make a lot of mistakes like Ryan Poles has, in my opinion. And I think one of them was making the decision to let Justin Fields go. So, but maybe he hits a home run with Ben Johnson, and that's all Bears fans can hope for. Now, getting back to Fields, I watching his tape, I didn't see it. I saw a really exciting player in college. He had a strong arm. Don't get me wrong. He could throw the ball deep. But the one thing I noticed in a lot of the balls that Fields throws deep, you see his players, his receivers coming back for the ball a lot. So it wasn't like there was a lot of this in stride down the field. Anything like 20, 30, 40 yards down the field, he'd lay it out there and give his receivers an opportunity to catch the ball. But there were a lot of times I saw film of receivers being wide open, having to come back for the ball. So Yeah, I wouldn't say an immaculate deep ball in my mind.
With his legs. In just
But that
8
was
games
college.
played in a COVID-affected 2020 season, Justin Fields completed 70.2% of his passes for 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions, all while averaging 4.7 yards per carry for his 383 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. His field vision and pocket awareness were areas of concern, and perhaps the reason he wasn't locked into one of the first picks. But he was a project that was dripping with upside, the kind of quarterback that is an incredibly exciting pick for any fan base. Chicago were the team to take a chance on him, but as it turns out, not a team that were ready to develop him. Justin Fields needed time to improve his quarterbacking fundamentals and adjust to the speed of the NFL. Any weaknesses when it comes to reading a defense and working through progressions would be greatly exacerbated at the next level, leading to an immediate lack of confidence and bad habits. So when Justin started the season as the backup to an often injured and declining Andy Dalton, the Bears were just asking for trouble. Of course, Andy Dalton only made it through 2 weeks of action before getting injured, thrusting Justin Fields into the lineup to face off against Myles Garrett in a fierce Cleveland Browns defense. And first of all, the Bears' offensive line was exposed all game long, giving...
I do have to give the Bears a little bit of credit that they did not force feed Justin Fields. They did go with Dalton. And look, you don't expect Dalton to get hurt. He wasn't that old at the time. So the plan should have been a little bit better than that. But look, injuries do happen. You never know when they're going to occur. But after the second game, I mean, they were blindsided a little bit. But, a lot of times teams only keep 2 quarterbacks anyway. And the third quarterback shouldn't even belong out there. He's like an emergency guy, veteran that you only want out there like if. I don't blame him for that. But yeah, you do blame him for their pitiful offensive line, which Ben Johnson is finally fixing.
Justin Fields a little chance of gaining any confidence in his first start in the NFL and leading him to taking a terrifying 9 sacks. Matt Nagy's play calling did not help either, refusing to play into his new quarterback's strengths and get him out on the move. The end result was a 26-6 beatdown in which Justin Fields completed 6 of 20 passes for 68 yards to go along with 12 yards on the ground. The Bears had quite literally no chance, being outgained by 418 yards to 47. Not ideal at all for Justin Fields' first ever career start in the NFL. While things did improve, this was the story of Justin's time in Chicago, to go along with 9 interceptions, as well as 657 yards and 4 touchdowns as a rusher. These are disappointing numbers for a quarterback's 3rd season in the NFL, but he did at least manage to finish the season with a promising 4-2 record in the last 6 games.
Which is why there were quite a number of people, including myself, and I know a lot of the analysts that I spoke to, handicappers, there were a lot of us who thought that the Bears should have kept Justin Fields and used that first pick to go get an offensive lineman, for crying out loud. You can use that for anything and just trust that Justin Fields was going to be your guy. The improvements, the little bit of improvements you saw, and they were a little bit, but you could see them. That's why it takes time with every quarterback, every rookie pick, especially it wasn't no top 5 pick. Every rookie pick develops at a certain pace, and he was starting to develop. And then the Bears gave up on him. So look, Caleb Williams, we weren't high on Caleb Williams here as well last year. You know that. He still has time, Caleb Williams. Now he's got probably the perfect coach to help him out. And boy, is he fortunate. But I still think Justin Fields was the way to go if you were the Bears. I know a lot of Bears fans is talked about here preferred it to go that way.
With the signs of genuine improvement. So much so that there was a strong part of the Bears community that wanted Justin Fields to stick around instead of going down the route of selecting Caleb Williams. Apparently not swayed by his late season flourish, or perhaps simply enamored by the generational prospect that was Caleb Williams at Chicago, to pair Fields up with an also newly signed Russell Wilson, giving them 2 quarterbacks at the opposite ends of their careers, opportunity he needed, handing him the reins for week number 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. Now in a more competent offense, Justin Fields looked like more than a competent quarterback. He completed 73.9% of his passes in that game for 156 yards, no touchdowns and no interceptions, while averaging 4.1 yards per carry on the ground, rushing for 57 yards. While Justin Fields managed the game well, Pittsburgh enjoyed an 18-10 victory to start off the 2024 season, and the wins kept coming. With Fields playing some of his best football of his career, he steered the Steelers to a 4-2 start, completing a career-high 65.8% of his passes for 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. He also made an impact with his legs, of course, picking up 231 yards and 5 touchdowns in those 6 games as a starter. All of a sudden, you look up and Justin Fields was putting up good numbers, winning football games, and had a rock-solid passer rating of 93.3, which was a career high. Career back on track for Justin Fields, right? Well, not quite. Despite the good play by Justin Fields and the winning record, head coach Mike Tomlin decided to bench Justin Fields and turn the ball over to a now off the youngster who has plans. The Steelers' loss was our gain, as Fields became one of the biggest free agent dominoes to fall this offseason.
And there you go. So there's a lot, just a little bit of a history on Justin Fields and his time with the Bears, his short time with a better organization. He played better. His win percentage went up. His statistics were better. Exactly the type of maturation that you want to see from a young quarterback. And for whatever reason, the Bears didn't want to invest in him any longer. The Steelers did not want to invest in him any longer, not to the take of the way the Jets did at 2 years and $40 million. So the New York Jets benefit. I guess we're going to find out. And that's why this is as good a time as any to bring in my special guest, Matthew O'Leary from the Matthew O'Leary YouTube channel. How's it going, Matt?
Good, Greg. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's good to have you on. And just taking a look back at Justin Fields and his first couple of years in the NFL with the Bears, with the Steelers. We're going to talk a little bit about the Jets draft class coming up shortly. But just starting with Fields, there's a lot to get excited about if you're a Jet fan. I know that there might be a ceiling. I'm not trying to I don't want to give anybody false hope regarding exactly where Justin Fields, what the type of quarterback he could eventually become. From what we're used to seeing around here, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we just heard it there playing that, he's someone who got better, it felt like last year. And for whatever reason, the Steelers decided that they wanted to go back to Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields hits the free agency market and the Jets are able to get him in there. I think he's, young enough where there's still some upside and some hope that he's going to continue his progression. And you never know. We saw some guys have some success later in their careers, whether it's Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, guys like that. And I think the Jets are kind of hoping to maybe find that guy in Justin Fields as well.
And what's important, as we saw there with his history with the Chicago Bears, and you saw it as his progression got better when he had better offensive line play, better structure, that the Jets had to make sure that they had aligned Fields with the proper protection. And that's where the draft class comes in as we begin talking about the Jets draft. And that is they double down. I know it's a completely different regime. But for the fans' sake, we just sit back in the last 2 drafts in the first round and pick 2 offensive tackles that have the talent that could wind up being around here for a very long time. And when you take a look at this Jets offensive line, Matt, it's the best looking offensive line on paper that we've seen in quite a long time if it all works out.
Exactly. Health is obviously the most important part of that. But at least on paper, from left tackle all the way over to right tackle with the newly addition of Armand Membou, it's hard not to get excited about the potential of that unit. I think, they invested a lot in it, first round picks in Fashanu, Vera Tucker, and Membou. But, John Simpson, they paid decent money in free agency a year ago. He was someone who I thought came in and did a really nice job in year 1 with the Jets. And then Joe Tippmann, a nice second round find who got better in year 2. So obviously we have to see it on the field first and all 5 of those guys together. But I'm with you. I think at least on paper, it's one of the best units we've seen from this team in a very, very long time.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? It's almost like it's too good to be true as Jet fans to say, well, yeah, it's a nice looking line and we'll see what happens. But I mean, will they be together week one? Are they all going to be healthy? Are they going to? How many times we look around the NFL and we see these teams? It doesn't happen to a lot of teams. It's actually it happens less than more. Where you see these teams and they wind up having the same offensive line guys are out there for the entire season, or they've played 75% of the time, 85% of the time together. Man, I don't remember the last time the Jets have had 5 starting offensive linemen play together for most of the season. And now with this young unit, as talented as they are, if we could finally get a little bit of injury luck along that offensive line, it could mean everything for this team.
Yeah, it really could. And, you bring in Justin Fields, and I think this team is going to be a very run-heavy football team, but you got to have a strong offensive line to do that. And you mentioned the youth with this unit. They're all, they're under 30 years old. They have the chance to continue to grow together if they decide to, retain Elijah Vera Tucker and John Simpson. But to me, I think the completion of this offensive line by adding Armand Membou is the most exciting thing that's happened this offseason.
So the Jets go the offensive line route. There was a lot of talk about after what happened. They passed on Bowers last year for Fashanu. He has a big season and is probably going to have a great career. And then Tyler Warren is now available, as was Colston Loveland, who actually wound up going ahead of Warren. And a lot of Jet fans were hoping that, okay, we missed out on Bowers last year. Well, we've got another chance, so let's go get one of these tight ends. So they decided, though, go back offensive line, which I have no problem for, especially when they come right back in round 2 and go the tight end route. And we've talked all offseason about what a deep tight end class it was. So what did you think overall? How satisfied were you and the viewers on your channel? How satisfied were they to be able to go Membou and Taylor back to back?
Yeah, I think it was a great start for the Jets draft, and that's what the viewers felt the same way. There were some who wanted, were very dead set on taking the tight end, which I get it. I was a big fan of Tyler Warren, but understood the route that the Jets went for Mason Taylor. I think he's an exciting young prospect coming out of LSU. Obviously has some good genes, right? His father, Jason Taylor, longtime career in the NFL, played a year with the Jets. Actually, the last time the Jets made the playoffs, his father was on the team, which is...
I couldn't even believe that. So for some reason, I don't even remember. I remember him on the team. I just don't remember him being like a big part of that team for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's, I'm excited for Mason Taylor. I think of the day 2 options at the position, he was maybe the best available at that spot, and they jumped on the opportunity in the second round.
And how fun is it that there's possibilities as well that Justin Fields, who threw college football touchdown passes to both Garrett Wilson and Jeremy Ruckert. So we're waiting for Ruckert to take that next step. And we talk about development timetables all the time. Well, Jeremy Ruckert, there's no reason to believe that he can't take a big step here. We're not expecting him to be like a bona fide star, but I still think there's a lot of growth in Jeremy Ruckert, and maybe the perfect timing to be able to catch passes from his former teammate. And then they also get that kid Stone Smart from the Chargers. So the tight end room is going to be completely different, and also, most importantly, young.
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely going to be a young unit. I'm, obviously excited about Mason Taylor. Jeremy Ruckert, I was expecting that leap last year, and I don't think he really took it to the level that, at least where my expectation was. But as you brought up, maybe a little bit more comfortable catching passes from Justin Fields. As for Stone Smart, he had a good run at the end of the year with the Chargers as a pass catching tight end. I wonder if they're able to carve out a role for him, but very different tight end room now than it was at the end of the season.
And then as far as the receivers, this is the one part on the offense. It's really, it's amazing that we're not talking about the offensive line as an issue anymore. But the one potential roadblock, as far as this season at least, to put together a really well-balanced offense is the receivers outside of Garrett Wilson. They went 3 deep last year, and now it's just Garrett Wilson and some veterans, some new guys, 4th-round draft pick who can't catch. We can get into that in a little bit. But that's definitely the part of the offense that is still a little bit of a question. But when I take a look at the Detroit Lions and how they ran their offense with their running game. And they didn't even have an athlete like Fields. Of course, Goff, that's complete opposite. But their passing game, they had an above average young tight end who just took off the last couple of years, and he had a bona fide number 1. But Jameson Williams was a guy that just kind of broke out a little bit last year. He still missed games, injuries, suspensions, things like that. So you really still can't count on Jameson Williams, and didn't have much else more than that. So the Lions did a really good job of putting up a lot of points last year, and they did not have a deep receiver room either.
No, they certainly didn't, and it's not all that far removed that Josh Reynolds was essentially the number 2 wide receiver for Detroit. I think it was 2 years ago in 2023 with the Lions, and they were, on the verge of a Super Bowl appearance before bowing out to the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. But maybe this staff coming from Detroit likes Reynolds in that role. You mentioned with Garrett Wilson, I think, obviously far and away going to be the one who has the most targets and receptions this year. But if they're using Mason Taylor, and who knows, maybe one of Stone Smart or Jeremy Ruckert can hit as, a decent pass catching option in this offense. And then, you talk about the running backs in this room. Breece Hall we know what he can do out of the backfield as a pass catcher. They might only need their wide receiver 2 to be like the 4th guy down in the pecking order of targets if they're going a lot to Breece Hall and going a lot to the tight end. So it depends on obviously what the plan is for the Jets offensively, but I think Tanner Engstrand could get creative and, scheme around those potential issues at the wide receiver spot.
And maybe they'll get a little lucky with their young receivers. Again, Arian Smith, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it or make it sound like now because he's a Jet, I like him better. I'll admit that there were probably 5 players in the entire draft class that I didn't want the Jets to take, and he was one of them. But now he's a Jet, so I have to hope that they know what they're doing, and they're going to give him a shot. It wasn't a first-round pick or a second-round pick or a third-round pick, so I give them that. We know he's fast. So if that dedication to hard work pays off, and if he can go from dropping 9 passes a year to 3 or 4, well, I think we could live with that, especially with his speed and how he might be able to help open up the offense a little bit for the other players because of that speed. So, but it's Smith and Corley as well. I mean, Corley, I don't care what Corley did last year. He's a rookie. He's a 3rd-round pick. I mean, we've seen receivers in the 3rd round. They do nothing one year, and then all of a sudden blossom a year or 2, a year or 3. But I think this is going to be an important offseason for Corley too.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm with you on Arian Smith. I really didn't like that pick. I thought he was like a 6th or 7th round receiver who ended up going in the 4th, which was a little bit disappointing, but he does have great speed, and you're hoping that he just figures out the drops. If he's able to do that, then maybe the Jets find something here. I really don't know what to expect out of Malachi Corley this year. The last regime was obviously very high on him at one point, trading up in the 3rd round to get him. And, they leaked out that he was the number 4 receiver on their board and they loved him. And unfortunately just didn't get very much playing time. So curious to see what that looks like this year and hopefully takes a step forward.
What do you think about any of the other free agents that they landed on offense? Josh Myers, I think, is a real solid veteran backup. I know everybody talks about swing tackles. Well, I guess Myers is their swing interior guy, whatever that stands for. And then also Tyler Johnson, good college player, hasn't really developed as I'm sure he had hoped for, but still he's put up some numbers. Obviously the Rams are a big reason. And then throw in some of the other players as well regarding some of those college free agents on offense, because to get Donovan Edwards after the draft, I thought I was real surprised that they were able to accomplish that myself, being a Michigan fan. I know Donovan Edwards hasn't lived up to where he had hoped he would be after he was the number 1 guy on the depth chart going into last season for Michigan. But you can't tell me that the kid still doesn't have the goods of what we saw the years prior. He is a touchdown kind of maker. You put him, you give him the ball 4 or 5 times a game, and you do the same maybe with Arian Smith. And this is how you want to build that type of team, that anytime you get the ball in your hands, you could score from anywhere around the field.
Yeah, I thought Donovan Edwards was a surprising one that the Jets got, but surprising in a good way because, that's kind of a bigger name guy around college football. I thought he had a chance to get drafted. I know, maybe injuries played a little bit of a factor in his, the last season or 2 at Michigan. But I'm curious, if he makes this team. They have 3 running backs that they like a lot in Hall, Allen, and Davis. If they want to carry a 4th, maybe Edwards does make the team there. For the UDFAs, I think he stands out, and Brady Cook too, the quarterback out of Missouri, right? Like Jordan Travis retires after the draft due to medical, and suddenly that quarterback 3 spot seems wide open. And I think, between Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook, who they just signed as a UDFA, I think there'll be a legit competition for that spot.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I mean, I wasn't like, I think there were a lot of other quarterbacks, obviously, that I liked that they could have drafted maybe later in the draft. But hey, you get him after the draft. There's nothing wrong with that. His skill sets, which is what you want from your starter. There's some similarities there. He's mobile, so I like that. But you know what? Maybe it's possible too that Donovan Edwards, because he's going to be competing with one. How do you pronounce his name? Kenny's last name. Do you know how to pronounce his name? The kick returner.
Nwanu.
Nwanu.
Yeah.
So Nwanu, we know, is basically a kick returner playing running back. So I'm guessing because of Donovan Edwards' game-breaking ability, that's what they're going to put Donovan Edwards in the same type of role. Why not? I mean, put him up there as a kick returner. We saw how a lot of people thought that the kick return game, the way the rules were last year, that the running backs actually were a better fit. And so maybe that's what Donovan Edwards needs to do in order to compete for that final spot of the team. I'm hearing some things about Quentin Skinner. We know a little bit about Damir Mueller from Rutgers, and Jamal Pritchett also had a nice career in the Sun Belt, which I thought was an intriguing pickup too. So yeah, I think there's some nice depth out there to keep an eye on when training camp comes around.
Yeah, training camp is such a fun time for me trying to figure out who's going to make this roster. And there's some legit UDFAs that they added who I think will have a good shot. At the wide receiver spot, I know it's not like they have the strongest wide receiver room, but I guess it'll depend on how many guys they want to carry at that spot. If it's only 5 guys, I don't know if any of these UDFAs really have much of a chance, but if they do expand it and want to keep 6, or we've seen them keep 7 before in the past, maybe that opens up a door for Skinner. I feel like is the one that I've heard the most about as the UDFAs, who maybe has the best chance.
Yeah, Gibson is in a tough situation now. So unless he has a big offseason, big training camp, a big preseason, I'm not sure he's going to be able to stick around. He might have to return a kick for a touchdown or something like that as well. But that's the way it is. I mean, that's how you get better, is that when kids come in, college free agent signing, it's great. It's great. It's a nice story and all that. But eventually, as you become a better team and you're deeper, if that kid doesn't keep developing, well, then you better get better guys than that. And so that's exactly what I think is happening right now with the offense and with the receiving game. By the way, I can't believe Allen Lazard's still here. On defense, I'm sure most of the fans can't believe it either. But I guess we're only going to see him for, this year, and that's it, right? The contract, that's all it is. Like, we'll be able to get out of it after this year. Is that all that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, they could get out of it at, now at this point. I was surprised that they didn't, unless maybe they're saving him as a June 1 cut, or see if Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh and wants to try to flip him to Pittsburgh for a pick swap or something. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm very surprised that he's still around. I'm with you.
All right. So on defense, a lot of the news really, I guess, because the top couple of picks on offense in the draft went that route. So on defense, it was more about free agency, and really high on the move by adding Cisco, because really liked him in college. You get off to a great start last year, not so much, but then again, the entire Jacksonville team was a mess last year, so I don't really blame him for that. Brandon Stevens, we know, is pretty much a project at this point, but I mean, they really have loaded up that secondary, especially with those 2 draft picks.
Yeah, I really like, you brought up the addition of Andre Cisco. I think that was one of the more under the radar Jets additions this year. I know he had a down year last year, but he's still young, and I think he's someone who would fit really well in this system. Looking at the draft picks on day 3, I didn't love a ton of what they did, but Malachi Moore was a guy that I really liked a lot out of Alabama, who they added in the 4th round. For me, just played a lot of football at a big program, a leader on that defense. And, it's a position of weakness on this Jets team. So I think he has a good chance to come in here and potentially play right away. So safety room is going to look a little bit different than it was a year ago with, Tony Adams as a starter and Chuck Clark as a starter. I'd be surprised if Tony Adams gets the nod as the starter at strong safety. I know that's where he's listed right now. But I do think Malachi Moore does have a good shot to, compete in camp and maybe start here.
Yeah, I agree. He's that talented. And the kid Thomas out of Florida State, everything about him is his length. It wasn't a good year at all for Florida State this past season. We all know that. But the kid's very talented. And to get him in round 3, a little bit of a surprise. But hey, because I think a lot of Jet fans were expecting a receiver maybe as early as the 3rd round. And they doubled down on 4th round picks, of course. And at least they got one receiver, not the one we wanted. But still, but to get a really talented cornerback like that makes you feel a lot better about the Stevens move, because for just bringing Stevens in, you were thinking, well, what happens if he doesn't work out? I mean, what happens if he's just as bad as he was with Baltimore last year? Well, now at least they have a couple of guys, Thomas, and maybe even Stiggers, that hopefully can continue to develop. And if something happens to Stevens, even maybe just an injury, then they have a lot more, they have a lot better depth now at that position.
They do have a lot better depth. And for where they got AZ Thomas in the 3rd round, I thought he was going to go early on day 2, like the top of the 2nd round, but ends up being there for the Jets. I think he fits the bill of what Aaron Glenn's going to be looking for with this corner. Corner's big, outside corner, can play press coverage. I think that's the type that Aaron Glenn likes. So I wouldn't be surprised, maybe not this year, right? Because he just brought in Brandon Stevens, but I think AZ Thomas is a starter at some point in this league.
And then they used a couple of their other picks on a pair of Miami defenders. And, I actually, the kid, the linebacker from Miami, there's a lot to like about that kid. When I was looking at his film, there were some things where I said, I could see why he was drafted in round 5, but you could also see that if he can develop and he's coached up, that there's a lot to like there. And I'm also intrigued about how they're going to use their defense, because with Detroit, the last couple of years, they kind of went back and forth with they used 2 linebackers one year. They used a 3rd linebacker another year. They kind of, the kid Barnes from Purdue was kind of being mixed in as that 3rd linebacker. So I think there's an opening spot for that 3rd linebacker job. And so I thought that pick was real interesting. And the kid Barron, to me, is sort of like now in the mix with guys like McGregor and Watts as far as just developmental edge rushers, because the Jets really need a number 3 edge rusher.
They do. Starting with Mauangoa, the linebacker. I think, there's upside, and I think linebacker 3 is kind of wide open. I don't think Zaire Barnes has really done all that much over the last 2 years to ensure that he's the one who gets that job. But even at minimum, I think that's a special teamer in Mauangoa. He played that role well in Miami. And for Tyler Barron, I mean, you nailed it right there. They're really looking for that 3rd option as an edge rusher. You have Will McDonald, who had a nice breakout year 2. Jermaine Johnson's coming off the injury. But outside of that, I mean, we saw a lot of Michael Clemens last year. And unfortunately, I just don't think he's really taken a step forward. And if you can maybe argue he took a step back last year. And I think with Barron's size, I would imagine that he's the Michael Clemens replacement potentially, as someone who can come in and play early downs against the run. With his size, maybe, he's on the field on 1st and 2nd down, and then Will McDonald comes in obvious passing situations, and that's how you kind of rack up your sacks for him.
Yeah, maybe Clemens can be a little bit more productive with the with a more size. I should say the opposite, but a less sizable amount of production as far as the snaps. He had too many snaps last year. He's not a starter. He's not even close to that. So maybe they cut that in half, and he'll be a better player for it. But yeah, somebody's got to step up. And who knows? I don't know. I don't see anybody available right now in free agency. Matter of fact, I mean, you get the usual names. There's like 3 or 4 of those veteran guys, but they're not coming to the Jets. The guys that are available, those 30-year-old and higher older guys, they're just waiting to latch on to a championship type of team once an injury occurs. So they're not coming to the Jets. But with what's left over in free agency to begin with, I mean, there really isn't a whole lot. I know there are fans who are wondering, could the Jets add anybody at any particular spots, but I don't know. I'm not seeing any matches, like especially at wide receiver. I think the only player actually that could make any sense would be if they wanted to maybe sign Keenan Allen. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like, look, I know Amari Cooper is still available, but even how he finished the year scares me a little bit. He
Yeah.
kind of looked done, if you ask me.
Too
And who
many
knows?
drops. Yeah.
And that too, good call out. Too many drops. So that's not an area that I would go. One that I would find interesting, but as you were saying, I don't know how feasible this is because he might want to go to a contender. But Zadarius Smith actually played with Aaron Glenn in Detroit last
Yep.
year. He's still kind of kicking around, and he's been productive. After leaving Green Bay, he's kind of bounced around for a few teams, but I think that would kind of be like the perfect edge 3 guy. But would he come here is obviously the big question. I don't know if he'd be able to do that, but of the names available, he's one of the few that I think would actually, make a little bit of sense if you were to get him.
Yeah, again, will one of those guys in their 30s want to come to the Jets before the season begins, as opposed to a championship type of team? I guess, but money talks. And maybe if one of those teams doesn't occur an injury or doesn't offer them, like the Lions, they might still be interested. Then maybe if the Jets want to go down that road, a lot's going to depend on how these players perform during the summer. Okay, so overall, what do you think the Jets have to do to be like, what concerns you the most right now? Because even if they make a couple of moves, most of what we see here is going to be what's going to work or not work for them this season throughout the roster. So what is it that you're most concerned with?
Yeah, I think we spent some time on it on the offense, but it's the wide receiver room outside of Garrett Wilson. Like, they need to get 17 games out of Garrett Wilson, because if God forbid he rolls an ankle and misses 2 or 3 games, I don't know, like, what are you going to do at that point, right? So that really would make you one-dimensional. They need one of these guys to step up, whether it's Josh Reynolds or maybe a younger guy like Tyler Johnson, who's been around the league a little bit but is still on the younger side. Or who knows, maybe there's something there with Arian Smith or Malachi Corley. That would be my biggest fear on the offense. Defensively, to be honest with you, I was very surprised they didn't draft an interior defensive lineman, just because it was such a deep class at that position. Now, I know they added some UDFAs and maybe one of them makes the roster, but I was hoping at some point on day 3, they'd take a chance on one of these guys. So I worry a little bit about how they'll be against the run in the middle of that defense on the line specifically. That to me really stands out as the 2 big ones right now.
Yeah, because the 3 guys that they signed, I mean, again, I'm not going to speak highly of it just because they're on the Jets now. I mean, I don't see it. All you can do is believe that your coaching staff and your general manager have targeted guys, veteran players that they believe fit their system and will do a good job. I mean, otherwise, I guess they would have gone out. I mean, especially later in the draft, and at least attempted to add someone else to the mix, but they seem content with these guys. So they know what they're doing, or at least we hope they do, because there's a blank slate there with this team. And maybe there's also a lot of hope that Leonard Taylor is the type of player that can really take a big step this year, because that's the only guy that we really look at outside of Quinnen Williams where we can have a little bit of hope. The rest of these guys, I mean, I don't see they're going to take another step. I mean, maybe they will, but I don't see it. But Leonard Taylor has that still. He's still got time to make that type of move.
Yeah, and there were some things that I liked about Leonard Taylor last year. And, he didn't have a ton of playing time, but I thought he looked okay. And, who knows, maybe another offseason program in the NFL will only help him. And, the opportunity's there. I don't think any of these guys are written in stone next to Quinnen Williams as a starter. So he'll have an opportunity in training camp to earn his playing time. And I'm rooting for him. I think, he was an exciting UDFA a year ago, made some noise in the preseason, and hopefully does it again this year.
By the way, I didn't ask you on defense, but any of these free agents here, college free agents, any of them who they signed stick out for you at all?
Yeah, maybe only Clark, just because another guy with lineage in the NFL. So I don't know how much of a chance he or any of these guys have to make the roster. As you can see, they're pretty far down on the pecking order. Honestly, the UDFA, and I know it's not really like a sexy thing to talk about, but the kicker, I think might have the best shot to make this roster here in Caden Davis, because unfortunately, Zerline didn't look very good last year. Maybe they like Anders Carlson, but I think it'll be an open competition for that spot.
I know, and there's also most people believe Morstead's going to make the team, and you've got the relationship with Banjo. But I look, as fans, we can just hope that these young kids have a really good summer. I mean, I just don't want to go back into the regular season where Greg Zuerlein and Thomas Morstead somehow, because Greg Zuerlein still has the talent because he's like one of these inconsistent guys. It's been his whole career like this. Who knows? Maybe he comes out this summer and starts looking like the old Greg Zuerlein and he makes the team. But you're right. Caden Davis has a lot of talent. He has a huge leg. And that would be the best case scenario. But I'd also like to see this Austin McNamara kid get a fair shake. And hopefully they'll be able to do something with him. Either way, it sure would be nice if eventually they could find the long-term answer at kicker and punter, something that we just haven't had here in a long time.
No, it very much felt like a rotation at both kicker and punter over the last few years. Morstead's done a nice job, but you know, he's pretty old at this point, right? He's, if not 40, right around 40 years old. So I don't know how much longer he's going to be hanging around, but yeah, it'd be nice if they can find some youth there at the position.
Okay, so the schedule comes out a week from Wednesday. And is there anything about the schedule? You can see these are the opponents. Anything about the schedule that you're looking at? Anything that you're hoping for?
I think it's going to be tough. I mean, some of the divisions that you play this year, the NFC North, you look at the Bengals and Ravens are good every year. The Steelers somehow are a 500 team or better even every year. We don't know who's going to play quarterback for them, but not an easy matchup. You have Dallas, who I think, you know, is going to be better this year than what they were a year ago. And the NFC South, I think, yeah.
Bad year to get the NFC South, right? Just as they're starting to make moves. Exactly.
It's not, you know, Tampa Bay's been good the last couple of years, but I think, you know, you could say these teams are ascending a little bit, maybe outside of New Orleans, who kind of still feels like they have some figuring things out to do, but it's going to be a tough schedule. I'm curious to see the order here in about a week or so, but, you know, having to go against the AFC North is never easy, and the South in the NFC is getting a little better.
Well, I know after what happened last year and the last couple of years with prime time because of Aaron Rodgers, you get the feeling that networks are going to stay away from the New York Jets, that we're going to have the minimum amount of games, I believe, that they could afford us. And maybe just because we're a New York market, maybe we'll get the extra game compared to, you know, another team like, say, Atlanta or Carolina even. But after what we've done to kind of disappoint the networks the last couple of years, I think they're going to stay away from us.
Yeah, I think so too. But listen, give me all the Sunday at 1 o'clock games.
I agree.
That better anyway.
I agree. Those primetime games, especially when you're not a very good football team, they could be kind of aggravating. It's like you just want to get on with your week. You don't want to have to stay up to like 12 o'clock at night to watch a game from a team that ain't going anywhere. Matt, I appreciate your time as always. What's going on over at the channel?
Yeah, still doing some fallout from the NFL draft. It's a little quiet right now in the NFL, but soon enough we'll be talking about training camp, and we do have rookie camp coming up, so hopefully get some notes out of that.
Rookie camp, OTAs coming up. So yeah, there's a little bit to like. That's why the NFL is awesome. Even in the summer, there's stuff to talk about. So let's just hope we don't hear any news. That's kind of the way I want to keep it, because any news that usually comes out of these camps is usually bad news with injuries. So let's just fly under the radar for once during the summer, and then hopefully we can have a nice training camp. So Matt, I look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to you around training camp, and hopefully it'll be here before we know it.
Sounds good, Greg. Thanks again for having me.
You got it. Take care. All right, that's Matt O'Leary. We want to thank him once again over at the Matt O'Leary YouTube channel. We'll have a link in the description, including how you can follow Matt on his YouTube channel and, of course, over on Twitter. Now, the rest of this week, we are going to talk to Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Giants, covering the team, not of the Giants, but he covers the Giants for the New York Post. Of course, we've had Ryan on the Our Lads Football Network for the last several years. So we're looking forward to that. Get an opportunity to get in both New York teams this week. And again, John Cooper is going to be on our top scout just before I interview Ryan. So we'll get an opportunity. I'll get his opinion, his expert opinion on the Jets class, on the Giants class, and a few other topics as well. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit of college football. And yes, even though most of the news in the summer in football comes from the NFL, because we get to find out what's going on with rookie camps and mini camps, OTAs, all that kind of stuff. Fact is, there's still, of course, a lot of news in college football because of the portal. And that's why I'm real interested and excited to talk to Richie on Friday after we talk about the Rutgers situation, because there is a lot to talk about there if you're a Rutgers fan, just like any college football team at this time of the season, with the portal, the changes, and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, really interested to kind of get up to speed on all of the key portal moves, because I think there are a lot of people that feel that the sooner that you can get an education on these college football teams, the better. There are so many of them, 130 plus teams. You have to do a lot of research on them. It's not easy nowadays because of the portal. So the sooner that you can get a leg up on this, the easier it'll be to put together your own, your own predictions, your layout of how you think the college football landscape is going to look for 2025. So that's what we're going to try to do, get a jump start. Talk to Richie on Friday about that. And we'll talk about more college football teams as well. So it's not just going to be NFL we're going to be discussing here. I know most of the time we wait until the season just before it begins to line up all of our college football interviews. We're not going to do that this year. I'm going to start to bring in these interviews a lot sooner, find out what's going on with each individual team regarding the portal and how they've changed their teams from last year to this year, coaching staff, things of that nature. So that's what's going to go on here on the OFN today on the Ourlads Football Network. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. That's the best way that you can support the channel. You can also, of course, look in the description area to take a look at our Insider program. And the Insider, one of the things that I love about the Insider, if I was an outside observer from Ourlads, one of the things that I got to love it is that you don't have to worry about ads. It's automatic ad blocker. So not only are you going to get inside stuff on what's going on at Ourlads that you don't get on YouTube or even on the website, we are going to give you the opportunity to roam free on the Ourlads website without having any ads in the way. So check that out. Link in the description for the Ourlads Insider. And coming up in about, I'd say, 6 weeks' time, maybe 2 months. It's going to be it's going to be late June. I think the draft review guide is being mailed out in late June. And so that's why I really want to have some of these interviews as well. I have 10 teams in the draft review guide that I will be reporting on, giving grades to, talking about what we know about the players, find out a little bit of what took place during rookie camp, mini camp before, because the deadline, I believe, is going to be about a month from now. So whatever we can get in from that time frame, we're going to report on, or I'm going to be able to report on 10 teams in the guide out of the 32, all 32 teams, of course, Jets being one of those teams. So the draft review guide is a really good way of giving you an opportunity to check out your favorite team or all 32 teams, of course, and how we believe that they did regarding the draft, and give you a little bit of information in there as well of why we believe it was a good draft pick, or whatever we think, because we're not here in the slam business, that's for sure. Grades are also kind of hard to come up with, but I know you guys want it. It's a fun talking piece, and we're going to definitely put that together for the draft review guide. So you want to check that out. Link in the description for that. So look forward to receiving the draft review guide sometime in late June. So I'm out of here. Once again, thanks to Matt O'Leary for joining us. Another O'Leary coming up on Friday with Richie O'Leary talking Rutgers, and Ryan Dinlevy talking Giants on Thursday. John Cooper as well on Thursday. And we'll see you next time right here on the Ourlads Football Network. For the OFN Today, I'm Greg DePalma.